I saw the tweets.
Yeah. So far, my parents don't know yet, which is scary. Well, I had a lot of time to think about it, so I didn't tell you, but I actually never went to bed after I left yesterday. And I came to that conclusion that I should drop out because if you think about it, my career...
Wait, you're dropping out? You're not doing your thing?
Well, that's going to be my way of really doing it, but like...
Well, good.
But anyway,
been tearing you apart for freaking years, dude. It's about time.
It's always been part of the plan to work for myself, to be my own boss. I never wanted to get hired. I don't want to get hired. I want to make the job. And you know what a college degree is for?
Well, that's just paperwork to get you into a job. That's
it's paperwork to get you hired.
You show it to an employer. I mean,
and I don't want to get hired. So that made the decision pretty dang easy.
You've never considered that before?
Not really. Well, I mean, kind of, but the thing is, my plan was always to get hired, like from the start, even back in like high school, you know, like I always thought I was going to get hired, or that I wasn't going to get hired, that I was going to make my own career.
You worked at a job for a while and you were not as bent up as you were in the first freaking 3 weeks of the new semester.
Because it's something in my brain just completely shuts me down when I'm given homework for something that ultimately doesn't matter. 30, here's $20 for your troubles, and you do you, bud, because it's your future, not anyone else's. Yeah, I really do hope my parents are cool about it. Yeah, I'm in the best spot I've been in my life as well, you know? That goes without saying. And the fact that I'm able to support myself while paying for college means a lot. Like, what if I'm not paying for college? Do you know how fast I can freaking save money? From kindergarten to elementary, all through middle and high school, then university, the expectation was always that I would be conditioned to work for someone else, to be a cog in the machine. That reality was made painfully obvious in my Mechanics of Programming course at RIT, where the assignment was to code a Space Invaders-like game in C with the Curses library. The project explained that I needed to create a new game thread for each enemy and process all movements independently, which, to put it shortly, made for a terrible game experience. The speed of the game was not consistent, enemies would collide with one another, input would be jittery because the literal pace of the game would constantly change. I decided to fix this in my project and use a basic game loop and process each enemy's movements in accordance with the loop. My version ran like a real game and was actually playable. Upon completion, I was told that I would get a 70% if I submitted the assignment as is, for the reason that the game, which they insisted wasn't technically supposed to be a game, was not implemented properly. That's when it clicked in my head that pursuing my computer science degree was training to get hired somewhere and to fulfill someone else's vision instead of my own. I'd never been the type to blindly do something because an authority said so. All through high school, I would do my homework during class so that I can go home and make YouTube videos. During my programming BOCES course, I convinced my professor to let me code an actual game engine instead of doing the regularly scheduled assignments. In the 6th grade, I literally refused to glue pictures to a whiteboard to make a timeline of my life because I felt, and I quote, that the task was beneath me. I'd been blessed, or cursed depending on your point of view, with the creative gene, and I couldn't stand being a means for someone else's vision. That being said, I was led to believe that a college degree was required to be a functioning member of society after decades of convincing from my peers, parents, teachers, movies, TV. Regardless of how much I hated school, I really tried to put up with it one last time, to get my degree and get the hell out of there. Unfortunately, that just wasn't gonna happen. In the process of trying to make college work, I would never give up on my passions. The issue is, there's really only so much that a person can put on their plate before things start to break down. I already uploaded a video explaining how college almost ruined my life, which will go into more detail on the situation, but to put it shortly, I grew distant from friends and family. My relationship with my girlfriend of 3 years suffered and eventually ended in both of us feeling ignored and unimportant. My passions, although not completely ignored, suffered to the point of becoming pipe dreams. What used to take a few hours wouldn't be finished for weeks or even months. My mental health deteriorated as I isolated myself, and I stopped caring for myself. I gained 45 pounds, lost my athleticism, and became weak. I rented basements and Airbnbs to save money while completely ignoring my quality of life and personal safety. At the moment that I decided to drop out, I was living 5 hours from home in an unfinished basement, sleeping on a futon, spending 18 hours per day sitting at a desk, and $20,000 in student loan debt. I would be jolted awake at 3 a.m. because the home's furnace would blast on, to the point where I would run upstairs in a panic because I thought it was going to explode. I would go weeks without going outside, skipped my classes, would choose to drink a meal replacement called Soylent for a cheap cost and because of a lack of motivation to cook for myself. I would cycle between starving myself to try and lose weight, then give up and binge eat pizzas, chips, and ice cream. Months would go by without going out to see my few friends that I had left, and sometimes several days would pass without me coming upstairs to even use the bathroom. After I dropped out in March 2020, I moved back to my hometown to stay in a lakeside summer home owned by a family friend. The place was private and low maintenance while actually being above ground, which was a massive improvement to my quality of life. COVID was just starting to get really bad, which led to Hypixel getting a massive influx of new players, as well as YouTube getting much more traffic than normal since everyone was mandated to quarantine. March 9th, 2020 was a very important date for this story, as it was the day that Hypixel Skyblock received the Bizarre update. The update essentially brought the stock market to the game, and through playing the game, I became familiar with investing. I'm gonna be 100% serious with what I'm about to say here. Are you ready? 2 weeks later, I pulled together all of my money that I had saved up at the time, about $30,000, and put it into various stocks and index funds in the real stock market, picked by some YouTuber friends of mine in an investment Discord server. By sheer luck, this just so happened to be the absolute bottom of the market, just before the Federal Reserve started up the money printer. Within weeks, my 30 grand had doubled. I would then pour myself into financial education by watching Graham Stephan on YouTube, and quickly went from blindly following the advice of friends to making my own investing decisions. When I made the decision to drop out, the channel was getting about 3.3 million views per month. As COVID raged on and I had more time to dedicate to streaming and making videos, over the next 6 months, the channel surged to 6.8 million views per month. Looking back, the sheer lack of control that I felt in that basement, the complete hopelessness, the loss, feeling like a cornered animal, seared into my brain the idea that I don't ever want to be in that state ever again. I would do literally anything in my power to take control back in my life, and that is exactly what I did. During this time, I kept my expenses as low as possible, most months below $1,500. Now that the quote dam has been closed and I no longer was paying money to RIT, I started to save money very fast. I would take this saved money and throw it into the markets, tens of thousands of dollars at a time. I got to the point where I was spending 5% of my earnings just to live and then investing the other 95%. On July 6th, 2020, I put down 7 grand on a new 2020 Honda Civic LX hatchback and financed the remaining 14,000 at 1.9% APR. As the pandemic would show us in the coming years, this was an extremely good investment. Not only does the car get just under 40 miles per gallon, but the used car market has since inflated to the point where if I wanted to sell the car, it would be very likely that I could turn a profit. As I continued to invest everything that I could into the market, the rally continued. My net worth ballooned from $10,000 to $100,000 in 5 months. On October 5th, 2020, I paid off the full student loan amount of $20,000. Beyond that, I continued to put every dollar I could into the markets, even to the point where I would subsist off of cheap food like eggs and oatmeal and whatever food my dad would bring over when he visited. Although I felt unstoppable at the time, I was ignoring something that was going to really bite me later on. By the time April 2021 came around, although I'd hoarded an obscene $300,000, that's not an exaggeration. Unfortunately though, I'd forgotten about one thing: taxes. In about a month, I had to come up with over $100,000 to pay Uncle Sam, but I'd seen how powerful it was to have money invested in the market, considering half of the money I made was from investing, so I didn't want to sell stocks. Of course I had to, so I begrudgingly sold about $80,000 worth of stock, and then of course incurred financial gains, which means an even larger tax bill, which is something I'm just not even going to talk about. For reasons that I still don't fully understand, from that point forward, my accountant told me that I would need to make 4 quarterly payments instead of a big one all at once, each about $20,000. Yeah, if for those keeping track, that math is correct. In about 8 months' time, I had to pay the government $180,000. I would try as hard as I could just to make enough each month to cover my tax payments without dipping into my investments. I would also find myself throwing money into a SEP IRA so that the government can't take any of it away, and then into a Roth IRA so that the government can't take any gains I make, and so on. And that's what I did for about 6 months. My net worth stayed exactly the same as I made money, only to immediately use it to pay taxes for the previous year and the current year at the same time, or contribute to tax-advantaged accounts while letting the investments grow. In addition to that, in July 2021, Hightail announced that it would no longer be planning a release until 2023 at the earliest, which was a huge blow to my motivation. Even though in the past year I'd been saving an incredible amount of money, the reality was that I was still very unhappy. Because of the pandemic, I couldn't just go out and meet my friends on a regular basis like I used to. Because of this, my social life was still non-existent. I was desperately lonely and felt increasingly overworked as Hypixel Skyblock just wasn't bringing enough content for daily uploads and streams anymore. To make the same video I did a year prior would take about 3 times the work, and I was expected to keep the same pace. Of course, for a while I still managed to do it, just because, I mean, who wouldn't try their best with such an insane opportunity? And to be honest, I still loved it. Making videos has been my passion for a decade. That being said, despite my best efforts, the channel started to come down from its peak and go on a steep decline. The channel declined to about a third of the views it was getting per month in a short 5-month span. This trend was reflected in the decline of the concurrent Hypixel players graph around this time, which would suggest that this was out of my control. Despite this, on November 12th, 2021, I put down $76,000 as a deposit for a new house in Florida. I figured that paying rent every month was just voiding money that I could otherwise be saving and investing, and although it's going to increase my cost of living, it is also going to increase the amount of money I get to stow away, which will bring me to my goal of financial independence faster. I ended up having to also pay an additional $24,000 in closing costs, mortgage points, and moving. It was rough. As you can imagine, I was completely out of cash and practically pulling my hair out as to not give in and sell stock, especially after enduring a 60% drop in Square. Oh, that one hurt. During the month of November, we actually didn't make any videos out of sheer burnout. And by the time we came back and I settled into the new place, the channel finally stopped declining, but it settled at about a third of where it was at its peak. As of recording this video, it's March 2022, 2 years since I moved out of that basement. Now I'm living 1,200 miles away in a house that I own in Tampa, Florida. For the first time in years, I finally made steps to better my health. From December 2021 to March, I made the commitment to go out into the cities of Tampa and St. Pete every weekend to meet new people. Now I found myself as part of a really cool friend group and we hang out all the time. During that time, I also fixed my diet and started doing regular exercise and lost 40 pounds. Doing this cleared a mental fog that I'd been going through, and it made me a lot more resistant to negative thoughts, gave me more energy. It brought back a lot of my self-esteem that got destroyed in 2018. My sleep was better, I didn't feel as much random pain, my breathing was easier. I'm convinced at this point that losing weight was probably the biggest quality of life improvement I could have done in the past 6 years. I now find that although I can finally do something about that lonely feeling, I struggle to let new people into my life. I guess that's a defense mechanism after being hurt as bad as I was. I need to keep pushing myself to get past that. I'm confident now that I could finally press the continue button on my life. I worked extremely hard to get out of that helpless and depressing place, and only recently have I found that I can go back out into the world again. That fear of not being in control still grips me to this day, despite the success I've had these past 2 years. It really does feel like it could all get torn away from me at any moment. I've been very open with you all in this video because I don't think I can give the proper amount of context otherwise. I know for YouTubers it's considered taboo to talk about finances. I recognize that I found myself in a very privileged position, and it sounds insane to say that I still don't feel like I'm safe. I recognize that the idea of having my whole life figured out by the age of 24 just isn't realistic. The unknown is part of everyone's lives, and it's normal not to know where things are going. That being said, just one last time in 2022, I am going to make the final push towards financial independence. I managed to save up an impressive stash of wealth, most of which is now locked up in real estate and retirement accounts. In about 2 weeks, I'll finally be up to date with taxes. Yeah, it took a literal year for that to happen. And we'll have a predictable monthly personal expense of about $4,000. That's definitely higher than I would have liked, but as you're about to see, I now have a ton of leverage and will be able to actually make that even less than my expenses before I got the house. Although my income was slashed into a third, luckily just in time I managed to put myself in a place where I can still save a reasonable amount of money each month while not spending an obscene amount. If I'm clever enough, this year, I might be able to bring my monthly expenses to 0. Now, I'm gonna make this as quick as possible considering the amount of data, but this is the master plan. All right, so between my mortgage principal and interest and my escrow payment, which is HOA, CDD fees, home insurance, as well as property tax, my monthly housing expense before utilities is $1,950. I now have the ability to leverage the 2 spare bedrooms that I have empty sitting in this house and then get roommates, and then have each of them pay $850 in rent. If you consider the $600 of equity that I keep after my mortgage payment, that means I'd be earning about $2,300 per month from housing, which conveniently would not only cover the mortgage and escrow payments, but it would also offset the internet, water and sewer, natural gas, pest control, and home security expenses, which would only leave one utility left, and that's electric. And to offset that, I'm hoping to get a solar panel system this year, considering that the electric bill is estimated to be $80 to $250 per month. I'm probably going to have to purchase an 11 kilowatt system, which, believe it or not, actually is going to be pretty reasonable because of the 2022 26% solar tax credit, as well as being able to claim depreciation and the home office deduction, which means that in addition to offsetting the electric bill, this investment could pay for itself in 4 to 5 years. An added bonus would also be that if I ever decide to upgrade to an electric vehicle, this would completely offset the cost of gas. Speaking of the car, I've estimated that in about 3 years, my loan will pay itself off. I could pay it off now, but with a 1.9% interest rate and inflation being over 8%, it would be pretty dumb of me to pay it off. I'm not going to get too far into it, but let's just say if your rate's lower than inflation, that's really good. On top of that, my car insurance premium's likely to decrease because I've been a driver for pretty long so far, but obviously in 3 years, I'd be over the age of 25. The car will be older. Also, I bundle with the home insurance, so I'm probably going to be able to bring it down even further. It's already pretty cheap at $112 a month, but it can probably get down to $80 a month. Now, if you consider knocking out that payment on the car after 3 years and the reduction of insurance, my transportation costs will go from about $500 per month to about $80 per month, which is insane. Here's another weird one. I didn't think that health insurance would be something that could make me money, but as it turns out, if you get a high deductible health plan, you can open an HSA, which is a tax advantage account. I would recommend you watch Graham Stephan for a lot of this stuff, by the way. I'm not an expert, but I know my stuff enough to be able to help myself. To put it simply, I can invest $3,600 per year into it, not get taxed on the money right away or when I take the money out, and I can write it off, and I don't get taxed on the gains so long as eventually I spend the money on health-related expenses, which we all are going to have, especially dental, maternity, that sort of thing. That being said, the insurance premium is $293 per month. If you consider that I can write off the premium on my taxes and contribute to the HSA and write off the HSA contributions, that brings the real out-of-pocket cost to about $115 per month. I've calculated that after 4 years of investing $300 per month into the HSA at the average market rate of 8% per year, I would offset the health insurance completely, and from that point forward would actually profit. So I'd make money from health insurance after 4 years. Again, it's very long-winded. I apologize. All right. We're almost done. Some tricks that I use to reduce my cost of living even further is to put every expense that I can on a credit card that rewards cash back and automatically pay my balance in full at the end of the month as to not pay a interest payment. Between the Citi Custom Cash Rewards card giving 5% on groceries, Amazon Rewards card giving 5% back for discretionary spending, the PayPal Cashback World MasterCard giving 2% in all my utilities and subscriptions, and the Carrot card rewarding 1% for all business expenses, including the editing cost, which is massive, I get back about $100 a month just from cashbacks. That's pretty freaking cool. And that leaves roughly $750 a month in expenses that are unaccounted for, including food, car insurance, gas, personal business subscriptions, discretionary expenses. Out of transparency, I'm going to tell you guys that over the past 2 years and after all those taxes and whatnot, I've managed to build the stock portfolio to $260,000, which is incredible. And if I assume a conservative 4% return per year on that, I would be earning $870 per month. Just in market gains. Technically, this means if I execute on my plan and get 2 roommates, buy the solar panel system, get the car loan paid off in 3 years, invest in the HSA for 4 years, I would officially be financially independent. I would knock out all my expenses and then the market gains would cover the rest. It sounds very long-winded, but that is my plan. I would effectively be financially independent. So was it worth it? I think it goes without saying that dropping out of college was the right choice for me. I don't think it would be reasonable for a fresh computer science undergrad to suddenly just make $200,000 per year for several years and buy a house and a car and solar panels and all this. That being said, the unstable nature of YouTube as a career could mean that I've already peaked and that the crazy earnings of 2019 to 2021 is all I'm gonna get. That's why for half of this video I talked about finances. The idea of having no income terrifies me. Would it be nice to just have a stable salary and live a normal life? Yeah. In a way, I envy people who can work for their shift and just be done for the day instead of 24/7 feeling like your career is gonna end, or obsessing over statistics, or worrying that you won't have a video for the next day. As a seasoned YouTube veteran, I can say in confidence that YouTube is not a career that most people would enjoy. I know, like, everybody wants to be a YouTuber. It's the new rock star. All the kids are like, oh, I wish I could be a YouTuber. But the reality is, although it looks and sounds amazing, being able to, quote, play video games for a living is only a small percentage of it. There's the script writing, the editing, the marketing, the titles, the thumbnails, the SEO, picking a topic people care about, and then you have to deal with all the anxiety and stress that comes from having no breaks, no vacations. Your income is never consistent and sometimes can drop to a third, like mine has, or even less, for reasons that are completely out of your control. The platform demands an infinite number of hours. Any time you spend not working is just that much less progress that you could be making. Maybe the reason why I'm so slow to heal mentally from what happened in 2018 is that in reality, I'm still not in control, just like I was in that basement. I still love YouTube though, despite the stress and anxiety it's put me through. It really is my true passion. I've made videos for free for 8 years before this because I loved it so much. Although I am scared of what the future might bring, I am confident that we will get through this rough patch and continue making content that I'm truly proud of. For those of you who stuck around to the end of this video, thank you guys. Seriously, none of this would have been possible without your support over these years. And all honesty, I feel extremely guilty to be stressed out after being given so much, and oftentimes I don't feel like I deserve it. especially considering how many people out there are just struggling to pay rent, let alone all this other crazy crap that I'm doing. Like, with that, I promise that from now on, instead of running away from anxiety, I'm going to do my best to chase the dream instead of trying desperately to claw back and desperately grasp back to get what I lost. I'm going to seek out and grasp opportunity, especially if my plans go through this year. I won't be able to fail, and hopefully it can finally snap in my brain that, hey, you know what? You don't have to be so freaking anxious all the time. You're still gonna be okay. I hope that you all got something from this, and maybe it helped you decide the path you want to go on in life. But with that, I guess that's it. So, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys later.